Podcasting from Memphis, Tennessee. He's a soldier, storyteller, historian, and maybe a bit of a hellraiser. Click, listen, and enjoy. It's Dave Carter on the Ricochet Audio Network.
Hey, folks, I am Dave Carter, and thank you so much for joining the discussion here today. Pleasure to have you with us. And it will be a discussion, a very timely and interesting discussion at that. We have a Ricochet co-founder with a bird's eye view of what's happening in New York City. We have a Ricochet member in Minneapolis with decades of experience, and he will be talking to us about what happened with respect to Mr. George Floyd from the perspective of an emergency medic. So let's get started here. Rob Long is the co-founder of Ricochet. He was the executive producer for the TV show Cheers. He also spearheaded other successful TV programs, including Sullivan and Son and the series Kevin Can Wait. He's been nominated for 2 Emmy Awards, 1 Golden Globe Award, and his written work has appeared all over the place in the Wall Street Journal, Newsweek International, Time Magazine, the LA Times, National Review, and more. But as they said in the movie Airplane, that's not important right now. So, and don't call me Shirley, right?
Right.
Because you see, Rob lives in New York City, which, like many other places across the country, has descended into Mad Max territory in the last few days. So, first of all, Rob, thanks for taking the time to be on the show, man. I appreciate it.
Hey, listen, let's make this fast. I got some stuff I want to pick up at the store. I know, it's not even funny, right? You're not even supposed to make jokes.
You put a sign that says everything will go.
That's what I always say. Like when I talk to people in New York, my neighbors I can always tell which ones have a sense of humor and which ones don't, because they'll say, "God, looting's terrible." I'm like, "Yeah, it's terrible." Did you get any good stuff? I got it. And then they look. The ones who laugh. One guy told me this morning we're texting. He said, I have already. It's like 9:30 in the morning. I've already been called tone deaf twice.
Yeah. Well,
so clearly he's making jokes you're not supposed to make.
But it's for at least the way I grew up, and probably you too, is it's a defense mechanism. You can kind of keep from losing your mind completely. By the way, this just in from David Diebel, our comedian friend. He said Cuomo orders looters held in nursing homes.
Yeah, that actually would be
par for the course.
Remarkable. Right? I know I can think of many people in the city whose heads would explode because you're not, that's capital punishment,
right?
Right. But which we're ordinarily against, right? But it's also a thing that didn't happen.
Yeah.
So you're referring to events that have been disappeared from public memory. Mm-hmm. So right. It'd be a complicated thing. Like in order for me to denounce you for making that joke, I'd have to first admit that I understand the underpinnings of it, which would bring down the Cuomo statue,
the wrath of
Square.
Yeah. Right. Well, first things first. Are you safe over there? Are you okay?
Thank you for pretending to care. I am in fact safe. It's funny. I live downtown. I live on 11th Street, and there are. I don't know. I can. If I walk out of my front door, if I turn left, the Verizon store on the corner of 11th and 6th Avenue was smashed and looted. That was night one. Mm-hmm. And then if I turn right, the University Avenue is that's where Union Square is, where Washington Square Park is. There's some demonstrations in Washington Square Park, but in general, there's not any looting. And then in Union Square, there's been some looting up and down Fifth Avenue. Nike store, places like that are completely gone. But pretty much yesterday, people were boarding things up.
Yeah.
It's funny because you can, if you own a little store in Manhattan or New York, anywhere, in Brooklyn especially, you kind of knew the first night you were going to get a pass, because the first night was going to be the big brands.
Okay. Yeah.
And then you realize the second night or the third night, you better start putting some plywood on the windows, because, nobody's really, the first stop, if you're a looter, is not going to be the local stationery store.
Yeah.
But eventually somebody's going to say, look, I do need some new pens and that, or printer paper or something. So I'm not trying to make light of it, but you could tell, people I'll put it this way, people quickly get a very practical attitude about this. Mm-hmm. And both the looters and the shop owners. And the only people who seem to be living in a fantasy land are on the media.
Yeah.
The media. Those are the people who live in a crazy town. The rest of us know exactly what's happening.
Right. About a week and a half ago, maybe more, I was talking with James Lilacs on the show, and of course he lives in Minneapolis.
Mm-hmm.
And we were talking about, at that point, first world problems like a pandemic, for example, and then came the riots. And I know that I believe that Minneapolis eventually did put a lid on a lot of this mess. And that city's leadership is decidedly on the political left as well. So to the extent that anyone can psychoanalyze any of these leaders, what is it that causes Mayor de Blasio? I mean, it's like his mind is a default setting that's stuck on counterintuitive idiocy, and rather than protecting the city. Am I oversimplifying that, or what is going on?
No, look, I mean, there's a simple way to answer it, is that he's a communist. I mean, I don't really mean that as a slur. I mean, he's literally a communist.
Yeah.
And anytime you love a theory that much, not only love it, I mean, communism is the theory that, if you're a true Marxist, and he is, like I'm not trying to be a McCarthyite.
Yeah, I get it.
I'm really trying to accept his worldview the way he's presented it.
Mm-hmm.
That you believe that all of this is inevitable, that we will inevitably enter sort of a communist utopia, but we probably do need to give it a nudge, right? Now, Marx said you didn't even give it a nudge. Marx just said, hey, this is going to happen no matter what. I'm predicting the future.
Right.
But the rest of us think, well, if you really want it to happen, you're going to have to give it a kick in the ass, just like Lenin and Stalin did. And so he believes that his theory is true. And so he's constantly, a lot of people are like this, constantly having to adjust his perception of reality to fit the theory. So, and you see this happens in a lot of time, a lot of public policy. People love the theory so much that they just they're unwilling to notice what's really happening. And all it does is, like, most people don't have that problem in their lives, right? Most Americans, most people in general, kind of go about their life without constantly comparing the evidence of their eyes and ears with the theories that they have about the way the politics and society should work. They kind of accept what's in front of them, and they negotiate their way around it.
Right.
And I feel like that's again, that's also surprising to me about the looting thing, is that, like, I don't know why it's so hard for my friends on the left to say, okay, in a big angry crowd, bad stuff happens. Mm-hmm. People go crazy. A big angry crowd. People go crazy, by the way, in a big happy crowd. I mean, how many times do we see when the local sports team wins the championship, people go insane and turn cars on fire and light stuff on fire?
Yeah.
That's when they're happy. They're just an incredibly. This is not unusual human behavior. It's not admirable. It's not acceptable. It needs to be squashed. It needs to be oppressed and suppressed by law and order, yes. But it's not as if this is some kind of crazy thing that we need to psychoanalyze and need to figure out the underlying reason for the looting is that people behave horribly, especially in groups. That's all you need to know. But he can't accept that. I think it's got to be for a reason,
I think you put your finger on it, actually, when he said that he tries to adjust reality to fit his theory, rather than adjusting his theory to fit the reality he sees all around him.
Right. Well, we see that with a lot of things, right? We see that with homelessness,
mm-hmm.
and homelessness is, if you live in LA or you live in New York or you live in a place where has homeless problems, there's an appropriate and approved way to describe people who are homeless.
Right.
And that is, you have to say it's a housing problem. There's no affordable housing. These are people who don't have housing because we don't have affordable housing.
Right.
But yet, as you walk down the street and navigate your way around the street, you realize, no. Homeless people are homeless because they are either mentally ill or they have addiction problems. Mm-hmm. That's why they're homeless.
Yeah.
We all know that's true. We're just not allowed to say it. And so, look, I have a friend of mine who does this. He writes a lot about, like, willpower, and people like doing things. Well, one of the things he says is, if you tell yourself a lot of little lies every day, I'm going to get this done, I'm going to get that done, I'm going to get this done, I'm not going to eat any carbs, and you break your word with yourself.
No.
That eventually, even if it's the small things, and you don't acknowledge it, at least you put you in a sort of a bad place. You get to a bad place. And I feel like that's kind of where we are in society. Like, we're in this bad place where we have one weird language with a separate alphabet that's entirely made up of lies
mm-hmm.
that we tell each other and tell ourselves and speak publicly. Whereas privately,
we know better.
We know better, and we know better with our friends.
Yeah.
And privately, African Americans in America are sitting at home saying, can you believe these animals looting these stores?
Mm-hmm.
Privately, people are saying a lot of stuff. They know that publicly they're not allowed to say. And I'm not saying it's racist to say it. I'm saying just stuff like, most homeless people have drug and addiction problems and or are mentally ill. That's just the truth. And we have different solutions for that. But I don't know. I'm rambling.
But it doesn't. But we have solutions. We have ideas, but it doesn't fit these theories.
Yeah,
that prevail in certain places. So.
I was talking to a friend of mine last night who's very, people tend to see the world, right? In like the old things. If all you've got is a hammer, then every problem's like a nail. Yeah. Right. Well, everybody. So I have a good friend of mine is in education, for-profit education investing. He's an evangelist in this field. He not only believes that we need companies and private enterprise to get into education, he believes that is the way that the country will not only prosper but thrive in the future.
Okay.
And so everything is about that. And so he tends to take a very dim view of teachers' unions and, big government teachers' unions. Mm-hmm. And so his analysis of this, which I thought was really fascinating, is look at if you do this, someone's done this research. If you match the number where there's trouble in cities with police brutality and complaints about police brutality. And look, let's be honest. That what happened in Minneapolis was the guy got murdered.
Right.
There was a murder. You will always find, I think, in some outrageous number of cases, that the policeman's the union has this incredibly locked up, tight employment contracts. Collective bargaining is in full force. All the things that we know, a lot of us anyway on the right know have destroyed the public schools or made it impossible to have any accountability in public schools. That's the case with police. And at the end of the day, it's still a job.
Right.
And, the reason Amy Klobuchar didn't fire, what's his name, Chauvin, back when she had a chance is because she couldn't.
And yet they're joined. Yet they're joined at the hip to the unions. So.
Yeah, right. And look, I'm not. I'm pro cop. It's fine.
Yeah.
But
not pro bad cop.
No. You got a gun. You got a badge. You have a lot of power. I think that you need some accountability. But if you say that, if you actually say to the people, stand up. I stood up at the protest I saw yesterday around the corner from me, and said, "Hey, I totally agree with you guys. You need some accountability here. Let's get rid of these." Collective bargaining contracts. Let's get rid of the unions. They would look at me like a mid-cheer, Yeah, wait, what? No, we can't do that.
Right. How'd you go with that third eyeball on your forehead with the look that you got? Speaking of accountability, I was talking with my wife the other night. We were watching this stuff. They were the dummies were looting Macy's in New York City, and I asked, and it's a rhetorical question, but it's kind of practical. Why pay taxes at this point? I mean, New York City is a good liberal city, where if something moves, you tax it. If it doesn't move, you subsidize it. So why even bother paying taxes to these morons in the first place if they're not going to keep people safe?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I mean, that's a big question. That a lot of people, the answer I think for a lot of people in New York City is going to be good question. I'm not gonna.
They're going to leave. Right.
And when they leave, it's going to be a problem. But I think that reality is when they leave, it's an amazing thing when you actually live in a city like New York, and you think to yourself, God, the tax base gets smaller. I mean, it gets smaller anyway, right?
Yeah.
What's going to happen? The city's going to go broke, and then you suddenly realize all the things the city does. The city will give you a phone if you want it. Mm-hmm. The city will pay for your cable if you want it. The city will. That's amazing stuff. The city has like the mayor's arts, performance arts, summer the city has an insane amount of stuff that it's been paying for years. I mean, pretty much one of the ways that Giuliani and Bloomberg were both very successful mayors is they pursued a kind of a Nixon strategy of guns and butter.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
Yes, because these are good times in the economy, so. Tax base was up, and a lot of tax rolls were like bringing in the money. And so, rather than fight stupid stuff, they said, okay, fine. We'll spend money on that, but in the meantime, we need 20,000 more cops or whatever it is they wanted, right?
Yeah.
But there's a whole bunch of stuff in the city budget that's just, you suddenly realize, my God, we're paying for that? Like, this city's not broke. The city's not even near broke.
Yeah.
The city's gonna have, have to tighten its belt probably, but that's, that's not necessarily such a bad thing. I mean, I think these things go in cycles, and it would not be a bad thing for there to be a little bit of a contraction in the city. New York City can last. New York City's been around for a while. It still is the capital of the world in many, many ways. A little haircut now and then, a little slap in the face, never a bad thing.
Well, okay, but I'm wondering but this is kind of a double whammy, right? We had COVID-19.
Right.
And now we've got this for people that, well, they're not social distancing anymore. They're tearing everything apart. How long do you think it takes the city to come back to where it was?
Well, I mean, we don't know. I mean, the riots and the looting, we kind of know, right? Because it's happened before.
Mm-hmm.
And it comes back pretty fast, right?
Okay.
It comes back, but we don't know. We don't know about COVID. This is weird. This is uncharted territory economically, and in terms of business and transactional. We have no idea. In the whole country, we don't. Right. I mean, the governors who seem to be the most nervous about it, they seem to have already started to open up their states wisely. I think, in my opinion, wisely.
Yeah.
There's only so much you can do. And the question is, are people in Tennessee, or people in Florida, or people in wherever, Utah, Colorado, are they willing, with their federal tax dollars, to subsidize the hysterical foolishness of Governor Cuomo of New York or Governor Newsom of California? And the answer to that is probably no, right?
No.
So the question is, like, all right, so just say they open it up. What happens to, what happens to a city in which the effects of the lockdown were so lopsided, right? So me and all my fancy friends, so we're fine. We're stuck in our house. It's okay. I can work on my computer. Yeah. But, 40% of Americans' workforce, and, a larger portion of that in New York City, cannot. I have zero evidence of this, but it seems impossible to me to imagine that the events of the past 3 nights in New York were not at least equally related to the fact that the very people doing the looting and the rioting are unemployed and broke.
Mm-hmm. No,
because the government said stay home. We're not, stay home.
Yeah, effectively, they took their jobs. I would not doubt that at all.
And then I would say the second thing I would say is that there's the alternative theory, which is something that we as conservatives I think need to face, is that when they've done economic surveys the past 2 weeks, they found interesting things. Like for one thing, in the month of April, household income went up, not down, and Americans in a larger proportion, year over year, more than they did a year ago, feel optimistic about their economic future. Which is exactly what happens when you send everybody checks, right?
Yeah, there would be a cause and effect there, yes.
Yeah, right. See, send everybody money, and I got money. That's not bad.
Right, they're making more than when they work.
It is more than anecdotal evidence to suggest that there are a lot of people at home saying, wait a minute, if I combine my federal COVID payment with my unemployment insurance, I am now making more money than I would be making going to work. And if I'm furloughed and my employer brings me back to work, then my unemployment runs out, and I'm going back and taking a salary cut.
Mm-hmm.
Look, these are the consequences of action. I mean, we should expect that. But so we don't know what's going to happen. We don't know what's going to happen. We may not know what is going to happen economically for another 6 months when people no longer have the right or have the choice. To stay home. Right. They have to go to work because all the other stuff is running out. So I don't know. That's a long-winded answer, but I suspect we don't know the answer. I suspect we will not know the answer to your question for a year.
There's a lot of variables there. A lot of dynamics happening. Last question, but looking across the country, everyone, of course, was appalled and angered by what happened to Mr. Floyd. As you said, he was murdered. I think everyone agrees that nothing needs to be done about bad cops. But I fear that so much of the unity that we felt after what happened to Mr. Floyd and what happened to Ahmaud Arbery, I'm afraid that unity is being destroyed by people who wanted to divide us from the outset. The single exception I see is that people are unified in New York City in some places chanting de Blasio resign. Outside of that unity, I wonder if we can reignite that common purpose again. I know that's from 45,000 feet, but do you have any feelings one way or the other about that?
Yeah, first of all, let's not breeze too quickly by the joy one feels in New York City walking by a group of people screaming de Blasio resign. That's a ray of sunshine we don't expect in this country.
Yeah, I believe in angels, right?
But I would say all of us in America, like if you look at the American system is designed to do this thing that we all hate, and that's to compromise, and that's actually to water stuff down. Mm-hmm. That it's actually to be sort of like in the middle, wishy-washy, neither too much this or too much that. All the stuff that people say they hate. Yeah. Well, I don't want the watered down nonsense. I don't want this. I don't want that. All that stuff. They hate it. But the system that we have, which I think is a genius system, written by geniuses, is designed to do precisely that. Sure. And we all kind of need, unfortunately, to accept that. Part of the I've not thought this through. So, I'm saying this to you now as a friend. Tell me if I'm full of it.
Okay.
The way we treat.
I gotta wait till you finish.
COVID,
okay, sorry.
Yeah. Okay. Right. Yeah, that's right. Okay. Right. You gotta wait. Right. The way I don't mean that other stuff. I mean that's what I'm about to say.
Right.
The way we treat COVID, right? We treat this thing. It's in our spittle, and I can get it on you if I'm too close to you, and all that stuff, right? Mm-hmm. And we say, okay, well then I'm gonna have to stay away from you, and wear a mask if I'm gonna get too close to you, until we know more about this thing, So we each believe and understand the science of I could be carrying or get this virus by being too close to you. The same is true with our thoughts, right? Mm-hmm. So we've had almost 20-year experiment of broadcasting our every stupid thing we think as loudly as we can in a viral way. We need to call it viral. On Twitter or Facebook or Instagram, whatever, right? And our worst moments can be captured on video and broadcast to the world before we even know that someone's holding their phone up. So we are infecting each other all the time with our stupidest thoughts. And maybe what we need to do is take off a mask and put on a muzzle and return to kind of that old American thing, which is like when you're out in public with people, you kind of just... You weasel word it a little bit. You're like, there's it's good on both. You do all the bland, compromising things that drive people insane today. That if I said this in front of a rabble-rousing crowd of rioters and protesters in New York City, they'd stone me to death. Right. And if I said this at a group meeting of the, conservative club. I mean, I said it to the Liberty group in Northern California, and they kind of looked at me like, "Oh, you're
one of those.
You're one of those."
Yeah.
And it's true, I am. But I'm looking at the system, saying, if you want to get permanent things done. I mean, you and I know. I mean, you and I, we were around. We're old. But we lived through the past 8 years. Let's forget about Trump. Just talk about Obama. Right. And pretend for a minute that you liked Obama and you supported Obama. Mm-hmm. What did he get done? Nothing. His signature big government program, Obamacare, is a complete empty joke. It's a total failure.
Yeah, you didn't keep your doctor or your insurance.
Yeah, and it's busted in half. It doesn't even exist. Yeah. The biggest issue in the Democratic the nomination process was what are we going to do about health care? And nobody on that stage ever bothered to say, didn't we solve this? We had Obama there for 8 years, but no, right? So why did he fail? He failed because he's such an arrogant jerk. It had to be his way. Mm-hmm. And there are a bunch of mealy-mouthed Republican senators there saying, hey, look, what if we just adjust it here, adjust it there? And he basically told them to shut up. I mean, I think he actually said the word. He didn't say shut up, but he basically said shut up to them.
And what he said was elections have consequences.
Yeah, right. And they do.
By shut
and
up.
And followed by a midterm election in which he lost the Senate.
Yeah.
And right. All those things are true. But what I mean is that the system isn't designed for that. The system's designed for him to say, in the way LBJ did, how do I get you to support this?
Mm-hmm.
And what do I have to give up? And I'll give it up. And, you and I may not like what LBJ did, but we cannot deny he was hugely effective. And for a reason,
right?
He was hugely effective.
No, that's a good point. That's a good point. I mean, the Constitution itself was a result of compromise.
Yeah, right.
People going back and forth.
I always want to say to people, like, especially Trump supporters, like, Trump is not going to be president forever. I mean, there are going to be Democrats in the White House in your lifetime.
Yeah.
And there will be a Democrat in the White House, and a Democrat as Senate Majority Leader, and a Democrat as the Speaker of the House in our lifetime, without a doubt. I mean, I would bet $10,000 that's true.
Mm.
So, we got to play the long game here.
Very true. No, I won't disagree with you.
Mm.
So we have that.
Yeah, that's right. This is bad radio.
No, it's good. No, it's good. It's good. It's thought provoking, and people, I think, on all sides of these issues need to hear it. So, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, just like, I mean, what do you want? What do you really want? I mean, I don't know. Look, when we're together and you're a friend of mine, we're sitting around, we're having dinner, whatever. Yeah, we could be uncompromising if we want. But if I'm trying to convince people of something, I have to, I got to negotiate. That's what the system is designed to do, and is most successful at doing if you want permanent change.
Right. Absolutely. Well, as we say back home in Louisiana, I'm going to bring my clothes to this line.
That's right.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for being on the show with us, Rob. I appreciate it.
Happy to.
When's the next flagship podcast coming out? A couple days?
Yeah, let's say a couple days probably.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll probably, try to do them Friday. Every now and then if we have a guest and we can't get the guest on Friday, we do on Thursday. Yeah. But I like to do them as late as close to the weekend as possible, because then you can kind of sum up the week.
Yeah, right, exactly.
On the theory that it never happens on Saturday, which is a theory that we now know is completely false.
Yeah, that's been rendered obsolete here lately.
Right.
All righty. Well, thank you, sir.
Still in Fantasyland. All right, well, thank you.
I appreciate it. You take care. Folks, that's Rob Long on the Dave Carter program.
Newsmakers, celebrities, authors, pundits, and normal people too. All here, all on the Dave Carter Show.
That's Ricochet co-founder Rob Long with some pretty interesting perspectives coming to you direct from New York City, where pure craziness has been reigning supreme. And you can hear Rob along with Peter Robinson and James Lilacs on the Ricochet flagship podcast. I can say that one time fast. That's where they talk to some of the most interesting minds and personalities on the political scene today. And, of course, there's a great deal more on the Ricochet Audio Network. The American Enterprise Institute has a show, as does Andrew Klavan and former Secretary of Education Bill Bennett. Commentary Magazine has a podcast on the network there, and a great many more fine folks are providing some of the most compelling commentary that you'll find on the internet. Now, usually, if you want to comment on these programs, or you want to comment on contributor posts, or read and comment on member posts behind the paywall, well, you'd start out by ponying up $4.50 a month. And if you want to write your own post and see your own work published on one of the most influential websites in the country, then you pay 50 cents more per month, $5. And that lets you read what you want, comment where you like, and write your own columns, which will be read all over the place. Well, so what do you do with a good deal like that? You make it better that you do. So here's what we've done. Just for the listeners to this program, if you're not already a member of Ricochet, you take this whole website for a free test drive. Go behind the paywall, see what it's all about, kick the tires for free. Just go to ricochet.com/gumbo, because this Louisiana kid wants to give the best to the best. Go to ricochet.com/gumbo, Gumbo, and test this thing out for 30 days. If you like it, then $4.50 a month gets you in the door after that 30-day free trial. It's like a good deal? Of course it does. So go to ricochet.com/gumbo, and you can join the conversation. Now, I'm forever saying that Ricochet members are some of the most interesting folks you'll ever encounter because they literally come from all walks of life. And we're about to prove that by talking to a gentleman who lives in Minneapolis and who retired after 36 years of working for the EMS agency that responded to Mr. George Floyd. Very quickly, if this is the kind of thing you want to hear more of, or you'd like to be a part of the program, sometime as a Ricochet member, for example, then head on over to ricochet.com/gumbo, as I just mentioned a few moments ago. Get that free 30-day trial and see what you think. I think you'll be glad you did. Now, first of all, I'd like to welcome to the show Mr. Duke Powell, who retired from EMS work, and I believe you periodically do quality assurance work for EMS as well. Is that correct, sir?
That's right, Dave, and thanks for having me on your show.
Well, thank you so much for spending a few minutes here and talking to us about what's going on. I'm really, really grateful to have you here. For folks who haven't read, because it was on the member side, but for folks who haven't read that superb narrative that you put out yesterday, about what you believe happened with respect to George Floyd. Can you walk us through that and kind of summarize events as you believe or you suspect they unfolded?
Yeah, I'd be glad to, Dave.
Thank you.
I think that what I've seen from several videos is that the police were called to a location, a store location, because somebody had paid with a fake $20 bill to buy some cigarettes, and the police arrived and found Mr. Floyd intoxicated, and the autopsy showed that he had methamphetamine and fentanyl on board as well.
Okay.
And so he also had some medical issues. They took him out of the vehicle, properly arrested him. And the problem started when they tried to get him into one of the squad cars to take him to jail. Apparently, Mr. Floyd immediately told him that told the police that he was claustrophobic, and that he was having a hard time breathing. This was before they tried to place him in the vehicle.
Yeah.
As they tried to place him in the vehicle, he fell to the ground. They picked him up and bodily placed him in the vehicle. This is where problems started. For some reason, and I don't know why, they pulled him out of the other rear door and onto the pavement and proceeded to restrain him. He was already handcuffed, but that's where the problem started. And this is really what I saw that really gave me pause to what the officers did.
Now you're going on any inside information or what you've seen from public accounts and seen on TV or in your own knowledge.
Everything I've seen has been on public accounts.
Okay.
In fact, the New York Times called me last week before all this really got bad.
Yeah.
Because I had been on Twitter and said, I don't think that the knee on the neck is what killed Mr. Floyd.
Okay.
And so they got a hold of me, and we went back and forth. And I saw some videos that they had that I hadn't seen before, which only really emphasized the fact that while the knee on the neck was inappropriate and shouldn't have been done, I think the problem was that they had a fellow that was having excited delirium that they didn't recognize, and they had him in a bad physical position, face down, and were compressing his neck, his chest, and he wasn't able to breathe. The deal is, Dave, and I'll give you an analogy. If you were to sprint 50 yards, I bet you'd be out of breath.
You'd bet right, yeah.
Yeah, okay. And the reason that is that your body is trying to get rid of the lactic acidosis in your bloodstream. And that's usually a respiratory effort where you breathe quickly. And he wasn't able to breathe with pressure on his neck and on his back. And I don't think that the pressure on his neck actually blocked his airway. I just don't think he was in a position where he is able to ventilate. And I was involved for an awful long time with emergency medical services. And for the past 20 years at least, I know that police, specifically Minneapolis police, have been trained in recognizing the danger of positional asphyxia and excited delirium. And my opinion, and it's just my opinion,
right,
is that these officers forgot their training. The other part of their training is a buddy system. They had 4 officers there, and at least twice during that encounter, one of the officers present said something about, aren't we, and, to paraphrase, aren't we worried about excited delirium? And the officer who seemed to be the one in charge said, no, we're going to leave him. Well, we're going to leave him the way he is.
Now, was the officer that was in charge, was he the one that had his knee on the guy's neck?
Well, it appeared to be. And
okay.
I don't know.
I mean, from what you could tell, was he the one saying, no, we're going to keep doing this?
Well, he seemed to be the one that they were listening to.
All right.
He was the most experienced officer on the scene.
Mm-hmm.
And of the 4 officers, I recognized one of them. It wasn't Officer Chauvin, but I did recognize one of them.
Okay.
They should have had each other's back, and they just didn't.
No, they should have had his back, too. Not in the way that they did.
Yeah. And yes, you're right. What I'm talking about is that, like in a medical situation, let's say surgery, give you an analogy. Anybody in that surgical suite, from the lowliest tech to the doctor in charge, can say, stop, wait a minute, and wait just a doggone minute.
Right.
What happened to that hemostat, for instance? And everybody stops and they look for the hemostat. All right. So that means that you work as a team. And I always told the new medics that I trained in that if you see me do something wrong, you better say something.
Yeah.
You better say something, and I'll sit and listen to you. And that's the way buddy systems work. And it was brought up a couple times that shouldn't we put this guy on his side? And they just didn't do it.
Let me break this down into a few component parts, just for my own understanding. You mentioned in your article yesterday and today here the positional asphyxia, excited delirium. What are the symptoms of that the officers should have seen?
Well, agitation is being one. Fighting against restraints is a big one. When you're handcuffed behind your back, you have no rational reason to think that you can get out of that. To continue to fight only exacerbates the problems that you have, and that is exertion. And what happens is that your blood gases get messed up, and as a result, you become acidotic in your blood. And the result of that can be, at the end of the day, cardiac arrest. And it seems like that happened to Mr. George, or Mr. Floyd, that he wasn't able to ventilate and blow off that acidosis to get his blood gas back into a more normal level. And, we've all been trained in this, and to see that happen in front of your eyes, I knew that when I first saw the tape. I watched the video that everybody has seen twice, and I told my wife, who's a nurse at a local hospital, I said, this looks like excited delirium, and the fact that they didn't position him correctly to allow him to ventilate.
I want to focus on another point as well. You mentioned that you talked. If you don't mind talking a little bit more about what really happens when the knee is placed on the neck. I know you don't put the onus on that issue in particular, but you say that a knee to the neck does hinder respiration, but not in the way that most people think. How so?
Well, it was all about how the patient should have been positioned. He should have been on his side. I also mentioned in that article where you handcuff somebody behind their back, their respiratory, their ability to ventilate is hindered, at least to some degree. I'll give you another analogy. the Romans used to crucifix people. And the
Right.
way people died was that the manner of which they were positioned did not allow them to ventilate adequately, and they slowly suffocated to death. So what happens when you have your hands behind your back? You're in a compromised position anyway, and then you're face down on the street with somebody on your neck, and I believe somebody probably on his back, which we haven't seen, but I think that will probably come out, in my opinion, that somebody's on his back. He is not able to really take good, deep breaths where he can blow off the acidosis. And so, that's just I've seen several.
It boggles my mind that they couldn't see this. I mean, it seems to me, correct me if I'm wrong, that you're describing that basic restraint 101. And the idea that they should have had him on his side so he could breathe, which, I mean, it seems to me like it's common sense. So I'm at a loss conveniently to explain why they didn't do that. I know you can't get in their head, but it's bizarre.
Well, let me tell you this. In the first 15 years of my career, maybe even 20, we would occasionally, and this doesn't happen all the time. This is a rare occurrence, what happened to Mr. Floyd. But we would occasionally come up to emergency scenes and seeing seemingly healthy people in cardiac arrest after they were taken down by police. And the officers are standing there just stunned. And they would say, we didn't do anything other than take him down. And police take people down all the time.
Right.
And they were just stunned. And we didn't know, and nobody seemed to know what was going on. But then here in about 20 years ago, things started to click within the medical community as, what's going on here? Because you saw this all over the country. And not all these cops were lying about this. And they finally figured out that it had to do a lot with blood acidosis that caused cardiac arrest. What we do as medics is to prevent this is we sedate people.
Yeah, right. So they don't panic and go into the...
That's exactly right. And so that all of a sudden we tried to stop the symptoms and let people relax and ventilate. And that's what we tried to do. And we probably overtreat just to prevent what happened to Mr. Floyd.
So this training, this knowledge is 20 years old at least, correct?
That's my memory. At least 15 to 20 years old. Yes.
Okay. Well, then there's just good. Well, I don't mean good. I mean, I like the way that the authorities are proceeding with this, with the charges that they're pressing. But you're in the quality assurance realm now, having done this for 49 years total.
Well, I did my first ambulance run when I was 16 years
Good
old.
Lord.
I'm 65 years old now.
Okay. Can I assume that some serious attention will be paid to this kind of thing again, given what happened to Mr. Floyd?
Well, there is some controversy whether positional asphyxia and excited delirium is actually a thing. You'll see a lot of people deny it, that it's just a means for police to get out of killing patients while they're in custody. But I'm here to tell you it is a thing, and it's something that most EMS agencies and most police agencies and really state EMS standard operating procedures recognize as being a thing, and it's part of the curriculum.
Well, I'm not going to ask you to comment on what I'm going to say, but staying on someone's back and they can't breathe and their body goes limp, they don't resist, they are unconscious, and you're still on their back, that's a thing. Killing them is a thing. That's just my opinion, and I'll just leave it with that.
Well, I will add to that, Dave. When you have somebody handcuffed, whether you're a police officer or a paramedic, their welfare is in your hands.
Right.
For them not to recognize that the patient was having problems, especially since he told them that he was having problems, and then recognizing that he was dying right there is problematic for sure.
Yeah, well, yes, that's proper. I say it's evil, but you're right. It's insane. Okay, well, with that, I'm going to have to wrap it up. I may get you on the program at a later point if you don't mind as this thing progresses. I know I'm asking you this on the air. You decide if you want to or not. But
Dave, you can call me anytime.
Okay, thank you. Then I will take advantage of that. All right, sir. Then until next time, I'll let you go now so we can press on with matters here. But thank you so much for taking time to be with us, man. And you take care, okay?
Take care of yourself,
folks. That is Duke Powell on the Dave Carter program.
It's the Dave Carter Show on Ricochet.
All right, that's Ricochet member Duke Powell, and I'm going to be calling on him in the future, perhaps making him the feature interview, the main interview, so we have more time to flesh out what happened and also get his perspective as this case proceeds forward. I'll also add that we'll be taking more time on this issue, be focusing on a lot more about the unrest and a great deal more as time progresses. Now, if you're curious to hear and read a little bit more about what I do and my own perspectives on a great many issues, including this one, I invite you to check out my website over at DaveCarterOnline.com, which is where you'll find a collection of articles that I've written, along with a slew of podcasts and one specific page on the site called Inkwell, which is a running stream of commentary for readers of my website. Again, that's at DaveCarterOnline.com. It's been a pleasure, as always, being with you folks and spending time with you, and I'll be checking in again with you soon. You folks take care.
Thank you for listening to The Dave Carter Show. Don't forget to subscribe on iTunes so you won't miss a single episode. And while you're there, please leave a review and tell us what you think. And on behalf of all of us at The Dave Carter Show and the Ricochet Audio Network, thank you for listening.